Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Swift Creek Customs, and I have been troubleshooting with a user, and I wanted to share some of the things that I found when I started looking into file types. So to explain a little bit about the issue, here is a photo if it'll show up on the video well. The user was having some issues trying to cut small intricate text. When I started looking into the different file types, and I noticed some differences. So I want to point those out here. Now, this is going to specifically be about text and cutting smaller, but it also applies to images as well. So we're going to take a look at the different file types and what is your best file or method for cutting, especially when you are working with text. Now, I'll tell you right off the bat that text that is typed out is going to be your cleanest cut. The font is installed on your computer, which is where the software pulls it from. Not all fonts are good to cut, in just bottom line. Not every font is a good cut font. However, when you type out a font in any software program that is a cutting program, it is going to be your cleanest cut. Traced fonts are not very good, as you'll see here in this example. So let's take a look at this. So here on my screen, I have a couple different things, and I want to show you how I came about this. And this is how I troubleshoot. So for those of you who are interested in seeing a bit of the behind the scenes process and what I do, this may be a video for you. So first off, I have this file. This was coming in, and the user, as you can see in this photo here, it is very small. They stated that they were trying to cut this font at 1 centimeter or smaller than 1 centimeter. So it is a very intricate cut. Siser Juliet and Romeo can do it if it is a clean cut file and if the machine is set up properly and your test cuts are done. So I know that it can cut intricate designs. That is not the question here, but I want to show you some differences in this file. So I'm going to come over here to a new file, and I had the user send me a couple of the file types. So they were designing in another program and then pulling it into Leonardo Design Studio software, and they sent me the PNG file. So first off, let's open this PNG file, and I'm going to open it as the print and cut because that is going to give us cut lines. I'm also going to choose 300 DPI. I am not sure that this file was 300 DPI to start with, but if you are opening PNG files, you do want to make sure that you are using high resolution 300 DPI PNG files. If it's low resolution, it's going to be pixelated, and that is what the software is going to trace, is those pixels. So when we bring this in here, I'm going to choose next. I can tell you right away, this is not, if I leave it as is, it's not going to trace. Those blue lines do not go around everything of this design. So I needed to play around with this and slide the minimum contours. Then I can also notice that it may give us a little stray cut line right in there. So this is when you are opening a PNG file, you may see some of these things, and it's all going to be dependent on how it was created, what the software sees, which isn't always what we see. So I'm going to click next and finished. And it opens at this small size. Now in this case, I had to open it, the PNG, as a print and cut, but I don't need it to print and cut. So I can take this, uncheck that, and it's going to give me my mat size. What I want to do here is compare a couple things. So currently, if you've ever opened a PNG, you're going to notice that this has it's a print and cut. It was opened as a print and cut, which means there are two parts to this file that we see here. I'm going to come up here, and for the video, I'm going to release cut contours. And what that does is it's going to take my cut line away from my print. And this is going to allow us to take a look and see how this traced when it brought in. If you look here, let me zoom in a little bit here. You can see that there's some uneven edges, some difference in the trace when it comes in. You can just see that it's not even because of 1, resolution, and 2, it is text, which is not always going to be a good trace. And that's across all programs. Even with working with Silhouette, tracing text in Silhouette is not perfect either. It's not going to give you a high quality cut in most cases, but it depends on the size of your file that you're starting with and what the software sees. You can also see down here, it's kind of sliced those off. So now I want to compare some examples. So I'm going to simply type out, welcome to the, I want to do the same thing to our slice of heaven. Okay, to compare this, and I have used the same font style that the user was using to create it in another program. And then let's zoom out here so it comes in. We'll pull this back up together, and I want to work in this same size so that we can compare it as much as possible, keeping all the factors the same. So you can see here there is a difference in the text, in the trace, and in the text and the style that it's showing here. There is an obvious difference when you start looking into the file on just the two of those, between the PNG that was saved in another program and the text you type out in the Leonardo Design Studio. If I double click on this, if I choose, and I already have bold on, so if I unbold that, you're going to notice there's even a bigger difference here. So I was trying to match as much as I could to the original text. But I can already notice differences in the style and in what is going to cut, how it's going to cut. Now, if I come up here to File, Open, and I'm going to open that SVG file that was provided, I'm going to choose Cut Only, choose Next, and Apply. And then that is going to give us our next comparison. And I'll zoom in here. So even with this, let's close some of these so we can see a little bit better. There is an obvious difference as well in when you compare these texts. So this one here is our typed text that I created in Leonardo Design Studio. This top one here is the PNG that was traced. This is the cut line for the PNG. If I take this one and simply overlay it, then I can compare those cut lines from the PNG to the SVG. And I'm going to zoom in here as much as possible to the point where Leonardo won't let me zoom in anymore. And if I see if it'll center properly, what you can see here is comparing the black is the SVG file. It is a much cleaner cut than the traced PNG file, even on this heart. So your cut is going to be much cleaner, smoother lines and edges than with an SVG file. Oh, they're both still together. With this black SVG file compared to a traced PNG. So if you have the options, your first option, if you can, is to use the text that you type out in the software. That is going to be the cleanest cut that you can get. If you don't have that option or you don't want to recreate your design, your next best cut is going to be the SVG, but it will depend on how that SVG was created. If somebody simply traced a design and then made an SVG of that, it's not necessarily going to be a clean cut file either. So it just really depends on how the file was created. But this shows, hopefully didn't confuse you too much, but it shows what I go through when I'm troubleshooting with a user and taking a look. You need to take a look at not just the machine, but also the files that are being used, because there is an obvious difference here in the quality when you compare typed text which does look different here than this one, and that could just be in the way the original design was created, versus an SVG, which is my middle one, versus a trace of a PNG file. So again, if you have the choice, type your text out in the software to use as your cut, especially if you are using or trying to cut very small text in intricate designs. Next up would be your SVG file, which is created as a cut file, but it's going to be dependent on how the designer created it. And your last resort would be your traced PNG file, especially if you're using small, intricate, detailed text, because you can see obviously that there is a major difference in that. So hopefully those tips have helped. If you do have questions, please leave those in the comments below. I tried to just show you the inside look, which may not always make sense to everybody else, but it's how I do what I do. Thanks for joining me and have a great day.